In this video, we will discuss the accounting equation and accounting elements. So what is the accounting equation and what are the accounting elements? First, with accounting equation, this is the accounting equation. Assets is equals to liabilities plus equity. Again, the accounting equation is assets is equals to liabilities plus equity. Let's have an example. Let's say you have 200,000 worth of liabilities, 710,100 worth of equity. How much will be the asset? Again, remember that the accounting equation is that asset must be equals to your liability plus equity. So meaning our total assets is equivalent to 910,100. Another example, what if our total assets is 72,900? And our total equity is 53,400. How much will be our total liabilities? It should be 19,500. So that our assets is equals to our liabilities plus equity. Next, what if our total asset is 10,500 and the total liabilities is 4,250? How much is the equity? The equity is 6,250. Again, total assets must be equals to total liabilities plus equity. If we're good with the accounting equation, let us now proceed to the next topic, which is the accounting elements. The accounting elements are assets, liabilities, equity, income, expense, and drawing. As you can see here, I differentiated the colors for assets, liabilities, equity to income, expense, and drawing. It is for the reason that, or I would like to emphasize here that assets, liabilities, and equity are considered real accounts. The other term for real accounts are temporary accounts, while for income, expense, and drawings, they are considered nominal accounts. And then the other term for nominal accounts is temporary accounts. When we say temporary, panandalian lang. These are the accounts that you don't need the values for the next year or for the succeeding years. What we do with nominal accounts is we close them at the end of the accounting year. We zero out their values. Because again, they are considered nominal accounts, temporary accounts, panandalian lang. Hindi na natin sila kailangan next year because we will generate new set of income and expenses for the next year of operation. Unlike with assets, liabilities, and equity, if you have your asset, this year, next year, kailangan mo pa rin yung asset na yun, such as cash, land, properties, and then, of course, the liabilities, which is the utang of the company. If you have your debt this year, of course, you have to pay it, even if it will take more than 1 year for you to pay the liabilities. So what is an asset? Or how do we define asset? Asset, these are the resources of the company. These are the resources under the control of the company or by the entity as a result of past events and from which future economic benefits are expected to flow to the entity. This is the definition of asset. These are the resources of the company, ari-arian ng company. And then when we say liabilities, it is a present obligation of the entity. Present obligation meaning it is an existing utang of the company, debt. It arises from past events, and then the settlement of which is expected to result in an outflow from the entity of resources embodying economic benefits. So if you will settle your liability, of course, it will require an outflow of resources, such as cash. And then equity. Equity is the residual claim in the assets of the entity after deducting all its liability. It is the residual claim of the owner over the total assets of the business. So let's say, for example, the company has a total of 100 assets. Its liabilities is 20. So meaning 80 of, from the 100 asset, 80 of that will go to the owner. It is the residual claim of the owner over the total asset of the business. Now, under the equity account, we have income, we have expense, and drawings. Now, ang equity ng may-ari, gumagalaw yan. Okay? There's a movement in the equity account of the owner. Whenever there is an investment, there is an income, there is an expense, and there is a drawings, withdrawals of the owner. Every time that the owner invests into the company, its equity account increases. Again, every time that there is an investment or every time that the owner make an investment in the company, its equity account increases. So meaning tumataas yung claim ng may-ari sa equity or sa asset ng kumpanya kapag siya ay nag-i-invest. Again, equity means the residual claim of the owner over the total assets of the company. So pag nag-invest pa siya sa kumpanya, yung claims niya sa asset ng kumpanya tataas din. Kasi mas madami yung ininvest niya. Also, if the company generates income, it will also increase the equity of the owner. So meaning if whenever there is an income and investment, the equity of the owner in the company increases. Tataas ang equity ng may-ari kapag may investment, kapag may income. Paano kapag may expense? Pagka meron namang expense, magdi-decrease. It decreases the equity account of the owner. Same goes with withdrawals. Every time the owner withdraws from the company, its equity account decreases. If there is an income, if there is an investment, the equity of the owner will increase. If there is an expense, there is a drawings, the equity of the owner decreases. Okay, so we have to use the link given below. This is the chart of accounts that we will use in order for us to journalize a business transaction. Now, before we try to journalize, let us proceed to debit and credit. So we have debit and credit. Have you heard the word debit and credit before? Can you define what is debit and what is credit? Now, the answer is debit means the value that the company received, while credit means the value imparted with. Again, debit means the value received, while credit means the value imparted with. But the simplest definition of debit and credit is this is not the definition, by the way. It's just that how are you going to remember if it is debit or if it is credit? It is your simplest way to identify debit and to identify credit. Now, when we say debit, it is on the left side, while credit is on the right side. Debit is on the left side of the account, while credit is on the right side of the account. I'll show you an example. This is an example of a journal. So you can see here we have debit on the left side and then credit on the right side. Debit, credit. Debit on the left and then credit on the right side. Now, what are the rules of debit and credit? Now, most students, if they are asked, what do you mean by debit? What do you mean by credit? They answer the debit asset, credit liabilities, or debit increase, credit decrease, debit inflow, credit outflow. No, that's wrong. Why? It's because of the rules of debit and credit. As you can see here, there are accounts that increases on the debit side, and there are accounts that decreases on the credit side. So again, if you're going to be asked debit and credit, debit means the value received and it is on the left side of the account, and credit means the value imparted with and it is written on the credit side of the account. So this is the rules of debit and credit. As you can see here, assets drawings, and expense, they all increases on the debit side. It is their normal balance. If someone asks you what's the normal balance of an account, meaning they're asking you what if mag-increase yung account, saan natin ilalagay? Debit ba or credit? So if you're going to be asked what's the normal balance of asset, the answer is debit. Why? Because it increases on the debit side. If asset increases on the debit side, what will happen? If the asset is written on the credit side, it decreases. Kung ang asset nag-i-increase sa debit, pag nag-decrease yan, saan natin ilalagay? Sa credit side. Same goes to drawings and expenses. Again, assets, drawings, and expenses increases on the debit side. Nag-i-increase sila sa debit, pagdating sa credit, nag-decrease sila. Baliktad kay liabilities, capital, and income. As you can see here, liabilities, capital, income, they increases on the credit side. Kapag nag-increase yung tatlong account na yan, ilalagay natin sa credit. Pero pag nag-decrease, ilipat natin sa kabila, the opposite side, which is debit. Again, remember that the assets, expense, and drawings increases on the debit side. It is their normal balance. While liabilities, capital, and income increases on the credit side. So, pag napunta sila sa debit, si liabilities, si capital, si income, pag napunta yan sa debit, ibig sabihin, nag-decrease sila, nabawasan yung value nila. Now, let us proceed to assessment part. Identify the effect of the given business transaction on the accounting elements if they will increase or decrease. So let's have here some note first. Remember that your point of view here is that you are the company. You're not the owner, you're not the manager, you're not the employee or anyone else. You are the company. This is to avoid confusion on how you will treat the accounts every transaction. So let's have the first transaction. The owner invested 100,000 cash in the company. Si owner daw nag-invest ng 100,000 cash in the company. Anong ginawa ni owner? Nag-invest. Anong sabi natin kanina? Based on our discussion with equity account, every time there is an income, there is an investment, the equity of the owner will increase. Every time there is an expense, there is a drawing, the equity of the owner decreases. As you can see here, the owner invested. So meaning the invested, right? Nag-invest. So meaning the equity account is being affected in this business transaction. So naapektuhan yung ating equity account. Anong nangyari sa equity natin? Did it increase or decrease? Sabi natin investment. So meaning it increases. Okay? The equity of the owner increases. What else? Aside from the equity account, ano pa ang naapektuhan sa ating business transaction? Nag-invest daw siya. Ano bang ininvest niya? Cash. What is a cash account? Look at your chart of accounts file. Cash is what? It is, what type of account is cash? It is an asset account, right? Okay. Our cash is an asset account. What happened to our cash the moment that the owner invested cash into the company? Did it increase or decrease? It increases. Why? We are the company. Again, our point of view here is that we are the company. And since the owner invested 100,000 cash in the company, as the company, what happened to our cash? It increases. Tumaas yung ating cash kasi nag-invest si owner. Ano ulit account si cash? It is an asset account. According to the rules of debit and credit, where do we put the asset if it increases? Should we put it on the debit side or on the credit side? It must be written on the credit side or debit side. We have to put it on the debit side because according to the rules of debit and credit, asset increases on the debit side. So let's have a journal transaction for this business transaction. How are we going to put it on the journal? So we have here a journal account. So let's input the date. So it is not stated here the date. So let's leave it blank. First, we have cash. What type of account are we going to use? Let's check the chart of accounts file. We have here cash on hand. We're not going to use the cash in bank account because we only use the cash in bank account title if it is written in the business transaction that you have used a check. Since it is not written here, we will not use cash in bank because in accounting, we have a rule that never assume unless otherwise stated. So since it is not stated here that the company used a check, so we're not going to use cash in bank. How much is the cash in bank? Or how much is the cash on hand of the company? Magkano daw? 100,000. So you have to input here 100,000. So pag nagsusulat tayo ng amount, we have to start on the right side. Sa right tayo nag-i-start. Okay? As you can see here, we have a big portion on the amount. This portion is for the centavos. Now, since wala naman tayong centavos, exact naman yung amount natin, we can write here 00 or we can just input dash. So no one can write in something in this portion. And then we start from the right, from ones, tens, hundreds, thousand, 10,000, and then 100,000. The next portion or space here, as you can see, it is way bigger than the 6 boxes on the right side. This one on the left side, the big portion here is for millions. Now we have debit, cash on hand. Bakit tayo may debit na cash on hand? Because again, the owner invested 100,000 cash in the company. As the company, we received the cash. So ang cash natin nag-increase. Cash is an asset account, and according to the rules of debit and credit, whenever cash or asset increases, it should be written on the debit side. That's why we have debit, cash on hand. Now, what should be our credit? Our credit should be the owner invested. So, meaning may investment. Our equity account was affected. Naapektuhan yung ating equity account. And since it is an investment, meaning the equity account of the owner into the company increases. So, pag nag-increase daw ang equity ng may-ari, saan natin nilalagay? According to the rules of debit and credit, we put it on the credit side. What should be the proper account title that we must use? Ano daw ang account title na gagamitin natin? Check tayo dito kay chart of accounts. Hanapin natin yung mga equity account. So we have here 2 equity account, owner's capital and owner's drawing. So since this is an investment, nag-invest, we have to use the account title owner's capital. Since it is not written or it is not stated the name of the owner, we will write owner. Owner's capital. How much? It is 100,000 on the credit side. Again, it should be on the credit side. So, dapat pantay yan. Hindi pwedeng may delay. So, we have 100,000 cash on hand on the debit side, 100,000 owner's capital on the credit side. As you can see here, hindi pantay yung pagkakasulat natin kay debit tsaka kay credit. Kasi yung credit, dapat yan naka-indent. Pag hindi mo in-indent ang credit, babasahin yan as debit. Kaya dapat maka-indent. Pag hindi in-indent ang credit again, it will be read as if it is also a debit account. So, hindi pwede yon kasi dapat balance ang ating debit and credit. After writing your debit and credit, you must put a brief explanation on what happened to the business transaction. Why do you have a debit cash on hand? Why do you have a credit owner's capital? So we can simply put here owner's investment. With regards to explanation, we might have different ways on how to explain the business, what happened in the business transaction. What is important here is that we have the same thought. So owner's investment. Some will write up the owner invested. Owner's investment. So this is our journal entry for our transaction. The owner invested 100,000 cash in the company. So what are the accounts that will be affected in this business transaction? Again, the accounts that are being affected are the assets and capital. Assets is affected because the owner invested cash in the company, and cash is an asset account. Capital is affected because the owner made an investment, and investment of the owner will affect the equity of the owner. So this is the accounting equation for the said business transaction. We have an increase in asset amounting to 100,000 and an increase in equity amounting to 100,000. Our liabilities are not affected in this business transaction. It is zero, so our accounting equation is balanced. Our assets is equals to our liabilities plus equity. That's it for this video. I will make a next video regarding this topic.